were married here in New Orleans in 1923, but they moved to Amite where my father lived, and that's where I was born. I was born at home on the old Ellis place, attended by Dr. Alfred E. Lewis, who was later my godfather. My father's family came to Virginia in the mid-1600s, and they moved down here to Louisiana in around 1820. My great-great-grandfather, who was Ezekiel Park Ellis also, was married to Tabitha Emily Warner, whose father was the first judge in St. Tammany Parish in 1811. He was the parish judge. His name was Thomas Cargill Warner. E.P. Ellis and Tabitha Warner had 3 children, one of whom was my great-grandfather, Thomas Cargill Warner Ellis, who became a lawyer. And after the Civil War, he moved to New Orleans, where he practiced law for a number of years, and then he went on the bench on the Civil District Court, served from 1880 until 1918. He had 3 sons, one of whom, Robert S. Ellis, was a district judge in the district that included St. Tammany Parish, although they lived in Tangipahoa Parish. His other 2 sons, one was a congressman, and the other one was the first chief judge of the First Circuit Court of Appeal, where I was to serve later. My grandfather, who was a doctor, was the son of Thomas Cargill Warner Ellis, and that was his name also, only he was junior. And he married Lucy Cothran, and my father was born in Amite in 1897. When I was about 3 months old, they moved to New Orleans. And Daddy went in business there. Matter of fact, he was in several businesses during the 20s. I was born in 24 and grew up there. When I got to be school age, I did kindergarten in the 1st grade at Henry W. Allen, which is still in business over on Nashville Avenue. And then I went to New Orleans Academy, where my mother was a teacher. And I did my whole grammar school and high school career there, graduating in 1941. Then I went to Tulane on an honor scholarship. Made one of the greatest mistakes of my life when I went to the engineering school. And I struggled through there for 3 years and did very poorly and had no interest in it whatsoever. Well, the war started in 1941. I'd started Tulane and joined the ROTC unit in September 1941, and then the war started a couple of months later. In February 1944, a year before I was supposed to finish, we were advised that we were going to get our commissions a year early. And so on February 27, 1944, I got a little stripe on my sleeve, and I was off to training in amphibious craft. I was assigned to the LST school in Camp Bradford, Virginia. I was 19 when I got my commission. I had my 20th birthday on D-Day in Lady Gulf. That was October 20th, 1944. I think I aged a lot. I became a lot more serious about things. After the war ended, we went to Japan and we spent some time up there. I became the executive officer of the ship. And we worked around Japan for a number of months, and then I was ordered to China to take command of another LST, the 1026. I took command of her, and we went from Shanghai down to what is now North Vietnam. It was then French Indochina. Picked up a load of Chinese nationalist troops and hauled them up to Manchuria and put them ashore there to fight the communists. And we went back to Shanghai, and when I got to Shanghai, my relief came on board, and I went home. Well, I got home, I'm not sure the day, sometime in early June of 1946. The next day I went out to the lakefront and got separated from the service. 2 days later, I was enrolled in summer school at Tulane. I, by then, had enough sense to know I wasn't cut out to be an engineer. So I went into journalism. I did journalism for a year, and I didn't like that. So I went into geology, and I got a geology degree. And then I went looking for a job. Went out to Houston, and nobody, I mean nobody, was hiring geologists. I came back to New Orleans. I was about to get married, thinking I was going to get a job and go to work. And I told my fiance, I said, "Betty, I can't find a job." She said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I think I might try law school." She said, "Okay, I'll get a job." And so she got a job, and I went to law school. And she married me anyhow. And we were married for almost 30 years. We had 2 children, Stephen, who was named after me, the oldest boy, and Douglas, my younger son. Betty got sick with cancer and had a fairly bad time in the last years of her life. She died in 1978, 77? Well, anyhow. She died, and about 3 years later, I met and married Ida LaFi, and we are still married. We haven't had any children together, but we sure have had a lot of fun. I did pretty well. I made the moot court board my junior year and the law review my senior year. I love the professors. It was probably the first time in my college career that I had this high-level instruction in all the classes. And it was just invigorating for me. And I loved every minute of it. While I was in law school, after my freshman year, I got a job as an abstractor for an attorney named Dalton Barringer who practiced in Covington. And I went over there and I did abstracting for him. And after my junior year, he offered me the job again, and I did that. And after my senior year, he offered me a place in his firm, which I took. I wanted to be in New Orleans. I had an opportunity downtown here, but I wanted to be a country lawyer, and so that's where I went. I think there were 4 in 5 in Covington, and maybe 4 or 5 in Slidell, and that was about it. Some of the attorneys were in Covington, Mr. Lindsay McDougall, who had been practicing since 1900, Adrian Schwartz, Dalton Barringer, of course, Monroe Simmons, a very fine lawyer, and a guy who later became a very close friend of mine, Julian J. Porky Rodrigue, and Arthur Finney, I think. Down in Slidell, you had L.V. Cooley, Lamar Harrison, Gus Fritchie. His son came over to join him about a year after I came. We had a little bar association, and we'd have lunch together whenever they had court. We only had court 1 week a month in those days. The courts were, by law, closed down for about 2.5 months in the summer. I think that when Louisiana was mainly an agricultural state, that's so people could go to work in the fields and not worry about getting sued or having a judgment entered against them or something like that. There was no city judge in the parish, and I was the only, we had nothing but Robert D. Jones, who was judge of the 22nd District, which included Washington Parish and St. Tammany Parish. And he would come hold court 1 week a month. Well, I did everything but criminal. You know, we'd do a lot of real estate work. We represented a bank and 2 title companies, and including Kansas City. And that was his. And did collection work. We did form corporations. We handled a little automobile accidents. You know, there wasn't a lot of business in St. Tammany Parish in those days. 1960, they created a second judgeship for St. Tammany Parish in Washington Parish. And I'd always kind of wanted to be a judge. And so I started thinking about running for that. And when it turned out that nobody with a lot of clout was running, we thought maybe the DA was going to run for judge, but he said he didn't want the job. So I announced, and so did 5 other guys, and we had a nice long campaign, and I won in a runoff eventually. You didn't find a lot of people together. I would go down to my office at 6:30 in the morning and do my day's work, and about 8 o'clock I'd hit the road, and we'd just drive around, go to grocery stores, and stop in at people's houses, and wherever there was a lot of people, we'd go to grocery stores and hand out cards in the parking lot, and go meet the gate at the mill in Bogalusa. You could see every guy who worked there if you met the gate 3 times. You go at 4 in the morning, noon, 8 at night, and then back. And you'd seen every guy who worked there twice. We just moved into the new courthouse. Matter of fact, as a lawyer, I tried the last case in the old courthouse and the first case in the new courthouse. But it had been there a while when I was elected judge. And we'd just gotten the new Code of Civil Procedure. So I read that over a couple of times, and then I changed all the clerk's forms to conform with the new law. And I got to know it pretty well, so I could handle the lawyers okay on matters of procedure. And it was not odd. I'm lucky that I don't have strong opinions about things, so that when I got up there to be a judge, I didn't go into a case thinking, well, this guy ought to win or this guy ought to win. I could sit there and listen to it and make my decision the way I thought it ought to be without any preconceptions or anything like that. It was just more fun for me to do that job. I had a case where a big truck ran head-on into a school bus. And there are a lot of deaths and a lot of injuries. It was a very tragic thing. And they sued everybody in sight. There were 24 lawyers sitting in the courtroom every day. And we were in the courtroom for 30 days, not 30 consecutive days. It took about 2 months to get through the case. But it was a real challenge for me I was brand new. And I learned so much in that case. And I hope the lawyers did too, but it was a wonderful case to try. I would have been unopposed for a second term as district judge. My cousin Robert Ellis was chief judge of the First Circuit Court of Appeal, and he died in 1966, very suddenly. And they set the election for the Court of Appeal on the same day as the election for district judge. So I had to decide, did I want to go to the Court of Appeal or not? And I was ambitious. And so I decided I'd give up my seat on the district court, which is a sure thing, and take my chances in an election. And I was lucky enough to win again. It was a 5-judge court when I started, and they had just started getting a 6th judge assigned so we could sit in 2 panels because the caseload was getting out of hand. And they had worked very hard when they went to 5 judges. They worked very hard and cleaned up their backlog, and by the time I got there, the court was in pretty good shape. Well, on a district court bench, you have daily contact with people and with lawyers. On a Court of Appeal, you have monthly contact with lawyers only. And it's a big change. If you're a gregarious person, all of a sudden you're sitting by yourself in an office with a pile of paper in front of you. We worked on a fairly rigorous schedule. We would get, as a rule, 7 cases to write the primary opinion in, and we would have 3 weeks to do that, and then we'd exchange, and we'd have a week to check the other guy's work, and then we'd go up and meet and iron out our differences and hand down our opinion. We had a 5-week cycle. We had everything. We'd hear them and decide them in 5 weeks, and then hear another bunch of cases the next week. And I was chief judge when I retired.
And how long were you chief judge?
About 3 years. I didn't like the political parts of it, trying to get money out of the legislature for what things we needed. And I found that the job was getting too easy. Deciding cases was getting too easy. And my feeling was, if you really think it's easy, maybe you're not putting enough into it. And I had my time in, so I retired. I tried practicing law for a year, and that was a complete fiasco. I don't think like a lawyer, and so I didn't like it a bit. So after a year, I quit and went to ad hoc, and I sat all over southeast Louisiana. Most of my time I spent here in New Orleans. Just being a judge, I think it's a wonderful privilege. I loved every minute of it, and I wouldn't quit if I hadn't had that little doubt in my mind that I wasn't putting everything in it that I ought to. Because it's a job that ought to take everything you've got, and that's what I did for 23 years, and then I let it go. I'd like people to remember that I was a good, fair, competent judge. That's what I'd like to